Time with JMU men's basketball coach Matt Brady, as the Dukes are 4-2, and they're going to play their final game of the Buckeye Classic at home tomorrow night against the Camels of Campbell University. We'll talk about that matchup this afternoon as well. But Coach, 4-2, 6 games in, your team's put a lot of minutes on the floor already this season, and as you go into this upcoming week, looking back at the 4-game winning streak and then of course the Ohio State, where is this team in your mind right now?
Well, I still think there's a lot of room for growth with this team, especially in lieu of the fact that we've just recently added Andre Nation back to the team. We've been without Joey McLean, who's a very clever and creative point guard that we're going to get back in a few more games with his foot injury, and still dealing with a lot of new faces and a lot of different rotations. What has happened with our group is we've played a predominant amount of 3-2 zone, and in this last game against Ohio State, I thought they did a really good job being prepared for it and getting the shots they wanted. So we came out of it, went to man-to-man, and actually played pretty well defensively in man-to-man, and didn't give them the same opportunities, especially from the three-point line. But I think our group as a whole we're learning to play together. There's a lot that we've got to do better, and I think when you don't play a great game, you can get exposed like we did at Ohio State in our first true road game. But I thought that they were, really a determined offensive rebounding team, and the quickness that they had defensively presented some problems that we didn't pass the ball particularly well against their zone defense. You
still ended up in the loss against Ohio State with 3 players in double figures, so that gives you 5 consecutive games with 3 or more, and in the 4-game winning streak you had 4. Is this one of the best offensive clubs that you've had, scoring-wise as well as shooting-wise?
Well, you know what? Certainly it's showing to be a team that can shoot the ball, and I think it's a team that has a lot of answers. It's a very young team. It reminds me in some ways of my third team here when we had Denzel Bowles, Julius Wells, Andre Semenov, Humpty Hitchens, Rayshawn Goins, but a lot of new faces, and Devon Moore and Andre Semenov were hurt the year before. So that group in my third year was a team that kind of got off to a good start, had a lot of faith in each other, and had a lot of answers offensively, but it was so new that we had some ups and downs once we got into conference play. I think we're certainly going to be tested here for the remainder of our non-conference portion. So my hope is that we continue to get better offensively and defensively, and we're more ready for the conference games once we get there.
Jackson Kent had been so steady for you, averaging about 17 points a game. He was your scoring leader going into the game against Ohio State. Struggled, obviously, in that ball game, Coach. But when someone like Ohio State or any other future opponent puts a lot of pressure on him, does that open up other opportunities? Where do those other opportunities come from?
Well, it's interesting. We play a 3-2 zone defense, for about 20 minutes every day in practice. But we can't simulate Ohio State's 2-3 defense and how difficult it is to get the ball in the high post. I thought once we got the ball in the high post, we were fine. The problem for Jackson Kent is offensively we thought it was so important to put the ball in the high post that we couldn't really run around and move him around that we would against other kinds of teams. Their speed, quickness, and length presents unique challenges, Ohio State. So the offensive that we wanted to put in for that game really kind of we put Jackson on one side of the court. Typically we would move Jackson around on the court, and he would run the baseline a lot, and he could lose other teams. But against Ohio State, the inability to move the ball from sideline to sideline is really a challenge. So I thought that Andre Nation played okay in that game. I thought he was still not ready, game fitness. There was certainly the 7 turnovers, and I thought his energy, going from offense to defense and the other way wasn't great. But I thought, again, Yohani Dallenberg, I thought played solid. I thought Winston Graves was aggressive, although he didn't make as many shots. So I think we have answers, and I think it's going to be different from every game.
I agree. Graves was very aggressive in the ball game. Obviously, comes up with 8 rebounds for you, which is a JMU career high in his short JMU career. Where do you look to get him shots? How is he to assimilate in your offense? Where should those shots be coming from?
Well, we do things where we call it swing our wings, where our guards will cross underneath, and he gets shots off that. Winston should get dribble handoffs from our forwards. He can get shots there. We obviously want both Jackson and Winston shooting open shots in transition. But in our last game before Ohio State, Winston had done a very good job off dribble handoffs, driving into the lane and making plays. And those are the things we want Winston to do. We want him to be able to explore the defense off dribble handoffs and quick ball reversal and get into the lane, because he's got an interesting ability to shoot pull-ups and floaters in the lane, and we want him to shoot a higher percentage from three-point range as well. But I still think that Winston's getting used to this level of basketball.
Tell me where you are with the decision-making of Ron Curry, when to facilitate, when to try to score the basketball.
Well, aside from the turnovers he had trying to throw the ball to the high post, I thought Ron played fine against Ohio State. I thought at the end of the shot clock, he did some good things, driving the ball, around the edges of their 2-3 defense. And I still think Ron's going to have to be a guy that understands who's on the court with him and when and where he can take his shots and how he can facilitate. Andre Nation coming back certainly is going to help Ron, and I think when Joey McClain comes back, Ron's minutes should come down, and Ron can be even more aggressive shooting the ball, when he has more energy. I think sometimes Ron has the ball late in the shot clock, with not a lot of energy because he's playing too many minutes. So my hope is that when we put all this together, that our energy level goes up at both ends of the court, and the guys are more rested at both ends of the court.
How did Andre's presence affect the dynamics of the team?
Well, I think what you saw is, Andre, we put him at the high post versus the 2-3, and he made some nice passes. That's a good place for him to play offensively versus man or zone. And I thought, at the back end, when he played on the baseline versus the 2-3, we started throwing the ball, at the rim to him, and he got a couple of baskets there. So it kind of loosens up the defense even at the high post when he's on the baseline, because that high post defender got to play a little closer to the rim. So Andre is a unique player, and he's a good player at our level, and he's going to do some good things for us. But he's got to get in more game shape. I don't think he was game ready, but that's natural. That was expected.
You're second in the CA in free throw shooting at 76%. Do you have a goal of how many free throws this team needs to have on an average game?
No, there is a rule, an axiom in coaching that you'd like to make as many as the other team shoots. I don't know that we're going to be able to do that because we don't throw the ball in the lane as much as those teams can do that to reach that formula. But I think one of the keys for us is that Poyasakis and Yohani have made their free throws. And, we talk a lot about, young guys making strides as players, and you do that from your freshman year to your sophomore year. But those two guys have markedly improved their free throw shooting ability. And it's not just the fact that they're making their free throws, but they make them in practice. When we practice our free throws, those two guys have made their free throws. So when you have five guys on the court that can make shots, and you have those two front court guys that are certainly improved, that's going to help your free throw percentage.
You've played two nationally ranked teams, four unranked squads. Can you handicap your field goal defense for us right now? You can't really look at it from the standpoint of the 6 games that you've played.
Yeah, I thought that we defended Ohio State man-to-man defense as well as we could defend them. And I thought had we rebounded their missed shots, we would have held them far below 40%. That would have been a significant accomplishment for our first true road game. I think as it turns out, they shot 41% from the field, but a lot of makes off their second shots, off the offensive glass. And I thought they made a concerted effort at the beginning of the second half to try and push the tempo. And when I called a quick timeout, that was what we talked about. That to me, they did two things coming out of halftime. The adjustments they were going to make is they wanted to push the ball really hard in transition, and that they were going to make it a really concerted effort to keep the ball out of the high post when we went against the 2-3. And when I called that first time out, those are the two things we talked about. We had to be very, very careful not to turn the ball over against the 2-3, because what they wanted to do was run the ball really hard in transition, but the answer we didn't have is off the glass. And if we had to go play that game again, not sure that we have an answer for that.
Let's turn it over to other members of the media here at O'Neill's Grill as we continue with our weekly fan and press luncheon with JMU men's basketball coach Matt Brady. Gentlemen.
Coach, the game against Ohio State was also your first road game. How would you evaluate how your young team did in an environment that they're not used to being in?
Well, it's interesting. Poyasakis, when he handled the ball versus the pressure, he turned it over. In half court, he was fine. I thought Yohani played really well. I thought Jackson was a little bit nervous. I just had this conversation on the bus on the way home with my staff. it's not unexpected. These are sophomores really playing on the road in front of 14,000 people. First true road game, first start, first nationally ranked game on the road. That's a difficult environment for an upper class team, but to put 4 brand new starters in that game, and Winston Gray's first road game in his home state in a school that he grew up idolizing. So a lot of dynamics, but especially for a young team to go on the road to play against a highly ranked but really capable offensive team. I think it's a learning experience, and it's something we'll draw on for the rest of the season.
Ohio State was arguably the biggest test you guys have had since the UVA game.
Sure.
How would you compare how your team did against between those 2 ranked opponents?
Yeah, 2 very different defensive styles and philosophies. I'll be honest with you, I thought that Virginia punched us in the mouth, and I give them all the credit in the world. I thought Tony was ready, for us, even though we had a young team. I thought that Coach Bennett really had his team ready to knock us out, and they played great. And having watched UVA since, they haven't played as well, really in the last couple games. In Ohio State, I thought that Ohio State was ready for us. I thought that we were more ready for this game than we were for our opening game.
And I know you talked about having Andre Nation back, and he left a little bit more to be desired, but with having another piece back, do you see the road to having the chemistry that you want this team to have now a little longer, or do you feel like you're getting there and it's going to come sooner rather than later?
Well, I'm always concerned with growth, like us getting better. And I didn't go into the season thinking we had to have X amount of wins by Thanksgiving or X amount of wins by Christmas. What I want us to be is really solid by January 1st when we start conference play. And we're not as solid as I want us to be. And in fact, I would say we were somewhat exposed, in the lane versus Ohio State, but I'm hoping we can grow from that. I really think that we need Joey back to rest Ron Curry and to give us another dimension, because Joey can do a lot of things, and Joey is nonplussed by environment, in my opinion. He's very ready to play at this level. He's a very confident young player. He's kind of slightly built, but he plays with a great poise and understanding of the game, and he plays it differently than really almost anybody else on our team, and he gives us another dimension. I'm really excited to get him back. I mean, we do need Joey to become a whole team. And yet I think our front court is showing glimpses of becoming, a little bit more seasoned. So we have a ways to go, but I do feel like this group, will learn as we go. And I think the other thing that we're going to do is, when we get Joey back, is start to play more man-to-man defense. We've played very little of it, and that wasn't the plan going into our season.
You said you expect Joey to be out for a few more games. What game are you targeting for him to come back, and when do you think he'll be practicing again?
Well, my target's seemingly different than our doctor's target. So my target keeps getting moved back. We're just paying attention to what the doctors tell us. They have concern that this stress reaction could grow into something more significant, and so we're being cautious, and I'm all for being cautious. I do think it's impacted our team, and we're hopeful that we get him back for East Carolina. Whether or not he can practice for 3 days before East Carolina, I have no idea. But he certainly changes even our practices. And he is a different kind of player than we've had in my time here. And he's somebody that I think all his teammates are excited to get him on the court, because we all recognize, he's got ability at both ends of the court.
Mm-hmm. So definitely he's out for the Richmond game?
Yeah.
Okay. I know you always say whenever you guys put on the jersey you want to come out with a win, but would you say Friday's game against Ohio State was kind of an encouraging loss?
Yeah, yes. I would say, there's things we can certainly learn from it, and our team showed some resolve. I thought they came out and played really well early, and we turned the ball over early. And what we had to do to stay in the game for 40 minutes is not turn the ball over. We turned it over 21 times. But even having turned it over that amount of times, we fought back, both at the end of the first half and the middle 10 minutes of the second half. Yet I still think we can go to the tape and show our guys, here's 8 different things that we could have done, a little bit better on different possessions, that if we do that, it's a 5-point game, with 4 minutes to go, instead of being 10, 12, or 13. So, it's an everyday process with this group, but certainly we're going to extract some positives from that game.
Mm-hmm. So how long did that bus ride end up taking you guys?
No, it was a lot quicker on the way back. JMU, the bus people were great, but we got back. And, what I said to the team right after the game, to be honest with you, was this. When you lose a game, you're never really happy with the loss, and I wasn't happy with it. But I'm always very aware of the fact that we have a lot of new starters. We have a young group, and they showed some resiliency. We need to be more physically tough. We need to take care of the basketball, and great shot selection is something that we're always in search of. So in that frame of reference, we have things we got to get better at.
How much man-to-man defense would you say you guys played on Friday, if you could put a percentage on it?
This past Friday against Ohio State? Yeah, after the second media timeout, we got out of it. So we played, almost 30 minutes of man-to-man, and our 3-2 has been good, and something we'll continue to use as a secondary defense at some point. But right now, it's our primary defense, and it wasn't meant to be our primary defense. In fact, we've talked about adding a third defense. Once we get Joey back, can we do something else to kind of change the look of the game?
So you said that was 30 minutes of zone you guys played?
No, it was 30 minutes of man-to-man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, as a coach, philosophy-wise, how do you feel about zone defense? It seems like it's kind of a scheme that bothers you a little bit.
Well, it's interesting. Sometimes it's not even how well you play the defense. Last night before I ended up falling asleep, I ended up watching UTEP. And Tim Floyd's the coach of UTEP. They're in Conference USA. They're playing University of Washington. And sitting there actually watching the game with my wife, and she wanted to flip into a different game. I said, I want to watch this because Tim Floyd has a reputation for a guy that plays different junk defenses. And they played triangle and two, something we actually prepared to use against Virginia. And one of the reasons you can play a second or a third defense is not so much that you're good at it, it's just something that the other team isn't prepared for. Luke Campanelli was famous while he was here for playing multiple defenses. He and I have had that conversation right before we started practice, playing multiple defenses. And sometimes you don't have to be very good at it as long as the other team isn't very good at playing against it. So, we talk about it as a way of slowing down the other team and getting them to get the wrong guys to shoot the ball. As long as you can rebound it out of the next defense, you can play it. You don't have to necessarily be great at it or be terribly comfortable at it. And, we hadn't practiced man-to-man defense, but I'm not sure that Ohio State was ready for us to play man-to-man, to be honest with you. And I think that was the advantage in that game.
Mm-hmm. And one other note, a guy that we still haven't seen play this season, Dante Sterling. Has you and your staff made any decision on whether you'll redshirt him?
Well, I'm not sure that, that Dante is ready yet for the speed of this game. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not yet ready to put him in a game at this point, but at some point that may change.
So when do you guys, how far along in the season, how many games do we have to play before you make a decision on whether you want to redshirt him or not?
In terms of the red shirt?
Yeah.
Well, as long as he doesn't get into a regular season game, the red shirt is available. Once he checks in for a second, that red shirt's now gone. And hypothetically, for any player that hasn't got into a game, for any freshman that has not played in a regular season game, that red shirt is available until they play in a game. That's not the case for an upper class person if they played in the exhibition or a scrimmage, but for a freshman it's available. And if I lose two players tomorrow, everything changes. So I'm keeping the opportunity available to us for Dante's benefit.
Sure. And the last question for you. You said you guys are thinking about mixing in a third defense. What defense is that?
Well, it's an ongoing dialogue we have with our team. But, it's something we continue to talk about. And it's something we talk about almost every day. Is there something out there? Could we play a 2-3 zone? There's a lot of different ways to play it, just a 2-3 zone. And where could we play a kind of a matchup defense? But some of that comes down to when we get Joey back. I wouldn't do anything until we get Joey back.
Coach, tomorrow night you'll be hosting the Camels of Campbell University, a team that comes in with a 1-4 record. Similarly so, they had their top player out at the beginning of the season. What have you seen from the Camels as you prepare for them tomorrow night?
So I think a team that's been in games. Right before we played Colgate, they had a chance to beat Colgate. They had a late lead and lost it. I think a very game Colgate team. So this Campbell team is a little bit undersized. They drive the ball really, really hard to the basket. They've got a couple of guys that can shoot it and shoot it from really deep. But they did just add in their last game a really talented player by the name of Rico McCarter, who transferred, I think, from VCU.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it was VCU, but a highly talented high school player that went to VCU and didn't fit into the program there and transferred here. Somebody they're really excited about and gotten double digits in their game the other day. But they have a lot of undersized, fast, quick, hard-driving forwards, and their guards like to do the same thing. So it's a style of play very reminiscent, very similar to what Chris Mooney does at Richmond. You know, Kevin McGeehan is the head coach. They employ all the same stuff. So we're playing teams back-to-back here, very similar styles.
All right, yes, and the Dukes will be hosting the Camels tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and then it's the University of Richmond coming in for a Sunday afternoon game. That game, the first 500 students will receive a free T-shirt and come on into the Convocation Center for the 2 o'clock tip-off, the Dukes and the Richmond Spiders. That'll do it this week at O'Neill's Grill. We'll be back next Monday as Kenny Brooks and Matt Brady will once again join us as we talk James Madison University Dukes basketball. Have a great week, everyone.